So we're going to invite our first 7-minute speaker up. His name's David Bentham. He started at Cognizant over 4 years ago as an SDR, and he's grown the SDR business to over 45 SDRs globally. And Cognizant, when I met them 5 years ago, James Islay, the founder there at the back, literally was doing $500,000 turnover. They're now doing 55 million turnover. So massive round of applause to Cognizant. And David, you're up on stage.
I'm doing this as a bit of a best man speech, so I apologize in advance. We've got this massive SKO and all of the global leaders are coming over. So this has been a little rushed, but I'm not pitching and I don't have a prop. So, all right. Hello, my name is David Bentham. I'm the Director of Sales Development at Cognizant. I've always heard that at the start of every one of these talks, you have to do a little bit of social proofing. Now, James has already done a little bit for me and stole my thunder. But 4 years ago, I joined Cognizant. We had 5 SDRs back then, and now we're actually 80 globally over those 4 years. And like James mentioned, when I joined, we were 2 million ARR. Is this working? Yeah. 2 million ARR, and now we're over 50. On top of that, in the macroeconomic climate that we're already in Q1, we finished 140% of target. SDR, my SDR team, my wonderful SDR team that are here today, sourced over half of all of the revenue, including the biggest deal in Cognizant's history in Q1. So today, what I really wanted to talk to everybody about was the importance of a feedback culture. A few years ago, I read a book called Black Box Thinking by Matthew Syed. I don't know whether anybody's read that before, but if you haven't, you have to read it. In the book, he explains the difference between the airline industry and hospitals in their approach to feedback and the impact that it has on preventable errors. In planes, if people don't know, there's a black box, and essentially the black box is indestructible. When planes crash, you can pick up that black box and you can read any data that's in it. And essentially that black box is shared with every single airline. By law, it's shared with every single airline. And as a result, today we know that planes are the safest mode of transport out of anybody else. On the other hand, hospitals, mistakes also happen. And unfortunately, tragedies happen as a result. The approach, as Matthew highlights, is to protect the medical staff at all costs. And unfortunately, in this book, he explains the fact that actually hospitals, there's as many mistakes as ever as a result of the fact that they're never taking feedback and learning from it. So, we know feedback's important. I've got a group of sales leaders in front of me, and so the big question is how, as sales leaders, can we promote that culture of feedback? And for me, it starts by setting 2 expectations when employees first come in. Firstly, all sales individuals are working towards the same company objective. And ultimately, as we go closer to that company objective, we all succeed together, right? The revenue is ultimately the target. The more revenue we're generating, the more promotions for the team, the more pay rises that are available, and everyone should be totally aligned to that. And secondly, and this is the other foundation, feedback is a gift in our team. It should always be delivered with empathy, and there should never be any mention of anything personal, but ultimately, feedback is always and will always be a gift. Once we've built those 2 foundations, we're able to create channels of feedback that help individuals and the organization as a whole learn and improve. One thing I've seen over the years is good leaders give clear feedback to their team members and aren't afraid to do so. People mostly want to get better. And as much as we're corporately trained to do one-to-ones, QBRs, CDCs, whatever you want to call them, how often are you seeing leaders go to those meetings and really not deliver the feedback that they want to give and not deliver the honest feedback that their team deserves? Often, and mostly what I've seen, hiding behind any numbers for objective reasons. one thing that I see time and time again is a whole management team agreeing on, a piece of feedback about an individual who is underperforming, and they're too worried to give them that feedback because they were so worried about hurting their personal feelings. Fortunately, my first manager at Cognizant had the absolute opposite thought patterns. I'd arrived at Cognizant as an SDR, and had been earmarked very early. I had a bit of management experience, and basically I'd been earmarked to lead the SDR team very shortly after joining. So month 3, and my manager pulled me into a one-to-one and said that despite strong performance metrically, she would not be able to put me into that position. And I quote, the reason was, nobody likes you, Dave. It was as simple as that. I'd basically come from a very different sales culture. It was your classical, like, dog-eat-dog, toxic competitiveness. My old manager was this Scottish guy who said, literally, if you've hit target, you've done your job. That's it, right? So you shouldn't celebrate it until we're overachieving. I mean, I could go on and on about the stories, but that's all I knew. That was the only sales culture that I'd been in. So I came to Cognizant, and I acted in exactly the same way. Anyway, I took that feedback very badly, as you can imagine. I went home, and I'm pretty sure, as embarrassers, don't judge me for this, I'm pretty sure I cried in front of my partner at the time, and I was just in a sulk for about a week. And then after that week, I then said, you know what, screw it. I'll play her game, right? And I was overly, and in my mind at the time, I was overly cheesily nice to the rest of the team. And you know what? Surprise, surprise, it worked, right? I bonded with the others. They appreciated my support on issues. And a month later, they made me their first SDR manager. So ultimately, it would have been so easy for her in that situation to blame a lack of promotion or, a lack of experience or, a pivot to the plan in not giving me that promotion. But she bravely told me that what I needed to hear and gave me the feedback that she believed, from her view, would make me better. And ultimately, what that gave me, as an individual contributor at the time, was the opportunity to fix the problem. As much as we look at feedback, as much as we look to give feedback to the members of our team, we must also want it in return. The single best move we have made recently in our SDR team is what we're calling SDR feedback sessions. I've always believed the managers and myself to be incredibly approachable individuals. We have five in our UK management team. We're a 100% in-office culture. So you can imagine that, like, with a bunch of young, extroverted individuals that we're very social with, we would have thought that they'd be constantly giving us feedback and giving us the approach that we need. However, as I've stepped further and further away, selfishly, I decided that I was very worried about the fact that I wasn't in the detail nearly as much as I should have been. And so what we started to do is set up these bi-monthly feedback sessions for the team. The trick with this is we didn't want it just to be the usual individuals having the conversation. So instead, we put every team member's name in a randomizer, and we pick 5 people, and they sit in those sessions and join us. We then explain, and this is super important, that this is a safe space, but ultimately, if people want to give anonymous feedback, they can do. They can reach out to HR and tell them. But every single piece of that feedback will be appreciated. The session, the first session we ever did, we actually took someone who'd been in the company for a month, and to this day, it's the single best piece of advice or best piece of feedback that I've ever been given in terms of moving the needle for the organization. And the guy was 1 month in. He's also the biggest introvert that we have in the team, the quietest guy. Of course it happens that way. So for me, there is 2 really imperative parts of the session. Firstly, the way that we deliver it is every single piece of that feedback is we think it's important. And then ultimately, if we disagree with that feedback, and we're licensed to, as leaders, we have complete license to say, you know what, I don't agree with that feedback. But we do not say it in that session so that we're constantly receiving that feedback. Later, we might address that in a one-to-one situation. We might address it in a, like if we think it's systemic, we might address it in like a really controlled environment with the rest of the team. But that's incredibly important in terms of delivering that session. Secondly, it's also sending actions after the meeting. So we get the feedback. I then send an email to the whole team saying, look, this is the feedback we've received, and these are the actions that we're going to take as part of that. And what that's doing is it's holding us as a management layer accountable for that situation, as well as making sure that the team, the next time they go up, have I lost it? The team, the next time we go up to those sessions, continue to receive that positive feedback. So, ultimately, as leaders, it's our responsibility to give clear and honest feedback to our team members, even when it's uncomfortable and difficult. And by doing so, we can help our team reach their full potential and achieve. But it's also our responsibility to seek and receive clear feedback and honest feedback, even when it's uncomfortable and difficult as well. So my question to the sales leaders in this room: are you doing enough to proactively seek and give feedback to the team? Is your one-to-one cadence enough to be developing the characters of your employees? And do you think that every member of the team is voicing their thoughts to you to allow you to act upon it? Thank you.